Hi, Amit, we can begin.
Okay. Uh, am I to begin with the welcome intro?
Yes, Amit, you can. We are ready. We are live.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Shaurya, Manjari, FNF, Rohan, everyone together here. My name is Amit Chandra. I'm currently the CEO of the Center for Civil Society, and I'm here to welcome all of you to this web talk series that we have been conducting with support from FNF South Asia. And very quickly talking about our partnership. The When we work with a partner organization, what we look at is whether we have philosophical alignment. Are we working on a similar kind of policy issues that is common and of mutual interest? And then what are the practices of the policy and philosophical aspect which the organization is keen to work upon? So basically, we look at the three P's: philosophy, policy, and practice, to find whether there is an alignment and we can work together or not. And I'm glad to mention that with FNF South Asia, we find alignment on all of three. And in fact, not just that, those three. The other P I would like to add, the fourth P from my end, is the people. The wonderful people that we have with FNF who have always been supporting of CCS or finding areas of common interest where we can work together. And multiple things that we are working with support from FNF is one, this web series, but apart from that as well, we have a fellowship for teachers, which is called Dharampal Fellowship, that we have been conducting. And many people in this audience who belong to schools or teachers, etc., should look forward to Dharampal Fellowship. The other training programs also we have been designing. And in continuation of our core engagement as to how do we promote education in India as well as South Asia, we look for common themes. And today we have multilingualism. And I think we have got the right panel, but panel introduction will be done by the moderator of the day. But I'm so glad to have my old friend and colleague Rohan Joshi being here on the panel to lead this discussion. And Rohan has great experience in this segment. Let me briefly do a quick formal introduction also of Rohan. Um, Rohan was formerly working as a senior fellow at the Center for Civil Society, where he headed the Bolo English project. He has a long experience of working in the education and skill development sector with a wide variety of organizations ranging from NGOs, private companies to government departments. He has led multiple large-scale projects in the education sector, such as School Excellence Program of Mumbai Municipal Corporation, skill development cell of the Department of Social Justice and Special Assistance, Government of Maharashtra. His specialization is in working with the government on both strategy and implementation of projects run in collaboration with non-government and private players. Rohan has a master's degree in education from Tata Institute of Social Sciences with specialization in language pedagogy and education policy. He is affiliated with a few non-government organizations in India in the capacity of advisor and board member. I would like to welcome Rohan and also thank him for taking time out to conduct this important web series. The web series we have been running is the ninth in the series. So previously we have done the 8 discussions, and always we have speakers from South Asia, from Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, India, Bangladesh, and others. And therefore, now I should pass it on to my competent colleague Rohan to take forward the discussion. I would briefly add that India got its new national education policy in July 2020. This was announced. One of the very important recommendations is about language and how do we introduce multiple languages in classroom for the kid. Once again, I'm not the expert. The experts are here, and we have the best person to take forward that discussion. So I invite and pass it on to Rohan to take forward the discussion.
Thank you so much, Amit. Thank you and very warm welcome to all of you. It usually doesn't happen to me that I'm sort of running short of what to say, and it's not for the lack of content, but it's for the confusion around which language to speak in. That's the kind of diversity of languages we represent, isn't it? Research says that South Asia has 7,000 plus formal languages and 4 language families, and so many different rich dialects and lingua francas that as we speak. Imagine the kind of opportunity it presents and the wealth also it represents in terms of this region. No single country here is predominantly monolingual. All the 7-8 countries that we consider in South Asia are highly multilingual, highly multicultural countries. And for the teachers, of course, and for the educators, of course, the job then is to not just sort of do justice, but to celebrate this multilingualism in their schools. So the topic chosen for today, of course, is multilingualism and how the sort of it translates into education in schools. So first things first, a very warm welcome to all our esteemed panelists. It's an amazing panel. I'm going to do brief introductions shortly. But prior to that, just a warm welcome on behalf of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation and Center for Civil Society, the host organizations for today. Amit has already talked briefly about Center for Civil Society, and all our audience is familiar with Friedrich Naumann Foundation. If not, this is your opportunity to, as you are joining on Facebook or any other social media channel, just please visit the respective websites to find out a little more about both these wonderful organizations. Thanks for having me as the moderator of this panel. I'm really happy to join you all and also looking forward to learn a lot. Multilingualism, of course, has been a topic that's been recognized. The value of it in education, as Amit was mentioning, a lot of our participants today are teachers, educators by profession who keep close link with classrooms and students. We know that multilingualism is something that's been on our agenda for a long time. And there have been some remarkable experiments in this direction. The research, the global research shows there are many benefits of multilingualism, which range across cognitive benefits to actual real life benefits in terms of how you think and how diversely you think. I'm sure the panelists today will add a lot more of this on this. I'm just emphasizing the importance, but at the same time, the complexity of this topic, isn't it? Because a lot of participants are joining from India. I'm also taking an opportunity briefly to just talk about switch to Hindi as well, that बहुभाषिकता और उसका शिक्षा में प्रयोग करना, ये इसका महत्व हम सब जानते हैं, लेकिन इसे अमल करना ये काफी चैलेंज रहा है टीचर्स के लिए और एजुकेटर्स के लिए. तो आई रियली होप, आशा करते हैं कि आज के पैनलिस्ट में आप कुछ सुने इस बारे में. यू विल हियर सम एक्साइटिंग इनपुट्स फ्रॉम डाइवर्स पैनल, एंड द पैनल इज इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज वी हैव practitioners who directly engage in the classroom. We have professors who also have the opportunity to look at the academic side of multilingualism. We have some very senior practitioners who work directly with the government. So they're not responsible for one classroom, but the entire education system of their country. So excellent to have this panel. I think I have spread out the importance and complexity of the topic that we are going to discuss. And the relevance, of course, remains, especially with the South Asian countries having these aspirations to reclaim their culture and to make a mark on the global scene with what we have, what belongs here. I think the topic could not be far more relevant. So once again, welcome to all of you. I'm going to do a very, very quick introduction to the panel, to all of you, so that we know whom we are going to listen to. And after that, I'm going to start our panel discussion. We'll take approximately 30 minutes of a conversation between the panelists and I. There will be some questions that I'll be asking. I invite all the participants who have joined us. First, thank you so much for joining us. It just assures us that what we have chosen as a topic for today resonates with you. Now that, as an extension of that, I also welcome you to share your questions, your comments, your thoughts in the chat box, or use the Q&A option that's there at the bottom if you're joining from your computer. We will try and do justice to as many questions as possible. Please do share your questions. If you're pointing it to a particular panelist, you can mark that as well. So with this introduction, we are good to go. I'm going to just quickly read out the introductions, the profiles of our speakers. So we have Professor Anjbin Sumro. Professor Sumro is an accomplished English language professional with an MPhil in English literature. Currently a dedicated lecturer at Sukur IBA University, Pakistan, where she specializes in fiction and non-fiction creative writing, multilingualism, and language ideologies. Anjani's research contribution includes publications on elementary education and socioeconomic disparity in literature. Welcome, Professor Anjmin. We are looking forward to hearing your thoughts today. Very, very relevant experience. Dr. Prasad Rao, whom I have also known otherwise in the work context, wonderful to meet you, Dr. Prasad here. Dr. Prasad is the founder and chairman of Paramita Group of Institutions, IRIS World School, and Explorica. He has been the academic advisor for Telangana Recognized Schools Management Association, TRUSMA, having membership of around 4,000 schools since 2015, and has been research head and quality advisor for National Independent Schools Alliance, NISA, since 2019. If I may add a line of my own introduction, Paramita Schools, I've had a chance to actually interact with teachers in a different context, one of the most committed and academically driven school groups. So Dr. Prasad, most welcome to this panel. You, and it will be wonderful to hear how you're able to include multilingualism in your schools. Also, we have Ms. Shalini Vikramasuriya. She's an educational consultant who has been engaged by UNICEF on the Child Friendly Schools program and on teacher education. She's a master trainer for Cambridge International Examinations. She has a master's in education from the University of Edinburgh and is also currently the faculty at the Department of Education in Sri Lanka while researching for her PhD on education. She has served on the Council for Education for the Commonwealth, Scotland, and has held leadership positions at schools. She has additionally developed curricula for music and English education. Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Shalini, for joining us, and welcome. We look forward to hearing your thoughts today. And our last panelist for today, Professor Thakur Paudel. Professor Thakur is an educator by choice, conviction, and passion. His major interests include institutional integrity, national self-respect, moral literacy, and gross national happiness. As the Minister of Education, Mr. Thakur is, in tandem with his colleagues, moved Bhutan towards fulfilling the MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, and the country's constitutional mandate for education. He represented Bhutan at several high-level meetings and conferences and led Bhutanese delegation to present the country's report on the rights of children, rights of the child in Geneva, under the leadership of UN Human Rights Commission. Most welcome to this session, and you represent a part of the group, especially the government side, who is also responsible for making it happen, not just for one classroom, but for all. Your experience would be fantastic for the panel today. So without any further delay, I'm going to start straight away with just inviting our panelists. Maybe let's start in the sequence that we read out the profiles, starting with Professor Anjbi. Just quick opening thoughts on multilingualism and classrooms, or multilingualism in schools. Just a couple of minutes opening remarks from each one of you. Over to you, Professor Anjbi.
Thank you. By saying that I hope voices. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sandra, for CIVI and FNF. And I would like to begin by saying that this topic is very sensitive to me. because I might be a languager where in my classroom I have to teach English, but all my jokes, the references, everything is in Urdu or Sindhi or Punjabi, in other languages. And this is, it's sensitive to me because I keep telling my students to speak their heart out, but I have to bound them to speak in English. It's a different reality. Like in this panel discussion, I will definitely talk from the point of what actually happens in classroom, a classroom reality, to what happens outside, to what they are bound, what we as teachers are bound. So for the first thing that I will say, to me, multilingualism is inclusivity. Multilingualism is the need of time. Multilingualism is what we need to include all, and especially those who feel we are the challenging learners. We are the learners, we are having difficult time, but we are not empowering them. Multilingualism is empowering students.
Fantastic. So inclusivity and empowering students. These are the two things that stand out for you in multilingualism. Okay. Fantastic. And love to hear more about that as we go in this panel. Dr. Prasad, could you please share yours? And then after that, Ms. Shalini, you could just unmute yourself, please, and share your thoughts.
Well, thank you, Ruhan, and welcome all of you to this panel. As Professor Anjabin said, one should speak one's heart out. How can that be made possible for a student? Unless and until the student thinks in a language and expresses with those feelings, the child will not be able to speak his heart out. Even it is a similar case with the adults also. The challenge with the people is this: they are not able to exercise emotions when they are speaking. Anything that you speak, any word, any language, which actually doesn't associate with feelings, probably that language will not have that kind of significance. So I think in the schools, it's important, after national education policy resolution in this country, it's important for schools and classrooms to exercise that. As you are thinking of multidisciplinary learning, it is akin to your multilinguistic learning also. So I think children at the stage of infancy, they're prone to learning as many languages as possible. Their brains are naturally architected, built into receiving the knowledge, sounds, symbols, everything. So when they are in their own very primary formative years of learning, if the children are using multiple languages in addition to mother tongue, I think those children definitely will get to solve complex issues tomorrow in their cognitive proceed. It's a very important thing. So the children who use multiple languages are known to do well in the what you call higher subjects like mathematics, sciences, and other things. So multilingualism is there to stay, shall stay, and should stay in the schools in all the forms possible. Thank you.
Fantastic. So definitely the cognitive benefits that you talked about and the practical benefits. And I think a very, very nuanced and important point of language education and its connection with academic success in other subjects. So look forward to hearing more of that. Shalini, over to you, please.
So I'm going to wear my policy hat as opposed to the teacher hat for this discussion. As you all know, we've had a 30-year-long civil war. And the catalyst of that war was language, because people were excluded on account of language. And this caused a civil war. And it also just goes to show how important language is. So we've come from a monolinguistic background, which led to the war. We're trying to make amends. We're trying to use language as a peace-building effort. We only have 2 languages that are functional. And so we have the challenge of, do we teach the children? Do we try to make them trilingual because we want to have they tick all the boxes in terms of peace building and social cohesion? Or do we do bilingualism so that we give them the mother tongue as well as exposure to a global language? So these are some of the challenges that we face. And I just thought I'd throw it out there because it would be nice to hear the views of those who are participants here. So that's what I'd like to pose to you as a challenge.
Well, thank you so much for bringing up this important point, because language, apart from being one of the most complex manifestation of culture, is also been often the point of political contention and exclusion, inclusion both. Similar is the case in case of Pakistan and India as well, with all the different languages that we have, and not yet having fully figured out. You know that most of the states in India are actually formed on the basis of language. So just adding my bit, very, very relevant, all these different points. And the policy angle is extremely important to talk about as well. May I invite Mr. Thakur for your remarks, please? You're on mute, Mr. Thakur. Could you please unmute yourself?
Good evening and Kuzizangpo. Pranam to all of you. I would like to begin by thanking my hosts, Frederick Newman Foundation and Center for Civil Society, and what joy it's been for me to be able to share this space with all of you incredible experts in this great field called education. I would like to begin by quoting a few lines from the great American poet Carl Sandburg, who says, "There's only one man in the world. His name is all men. There's only one woman in the world, and her name is all women. There's only one child in the world, and the child's name is all children." At the most universal, the broadest level, we are all the same. Human beings, men, women, and children. And that's it. However, we are so various. We are all over the place. And what differentiates us is our voice, our language, our uniqueness. Hence, the celebration of this uniqueness in the multiple ways in which we can. So multilingualism for me is the celebration of diversity, the celebration of our humanity, our uniqueness, our individuality, our integrity. That is multilingualism for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The consensus among all the panelists is visible about the importance of multilingualism, and it could not be so it makes me really happy as a moderator of the discussion to sort of see all the different aspects of multilingualism, the cognitive side of it, the inclusivity side of it, the practical benefits of multilingualism, as well as the complexity of it, which Shalini also pointed out. We have touched upon all the different aspects of multilingualism, and each panelist coming in with their views. This is fantastic. I'm just going to make a quick request to all our participants as well, many of whom we were told are educators. It's just a coincidence that 5 of us are sitting here and talking to you, but I'm very sure you have many experiences on ground in classroom that you would like to share. So in one sense, all of you are experts. And if you are a South Asian, by virtue of it, you will be bilingual at least. So you will also have some of your own experiences with multilingualism. Please do not hesitate to share either here in Q&A chat, or you could just add a comment on whichever platform you're watching this. So I just invite you, since we can't see you, to participate, and also please share your expertise. I'm sure I can say it on behalf of all the panelists that we will benefit a lot from your questions and your inputs as well. With this, now I have my first question. Let's start this time with, in fact, with Shalini. I'm going to start this question a little bit at the policy level. In a country like Sri Lanka, what benefits more practically do you see of multilingualism, and in schools particularly, making it happen, in given the context, that the social political context that you share of Sri Lanka and its recent sort of connection with multilingualism? May I please request you to share your views with us?
So about shortly after the war ended, it took us about 5 years to decide on which route to follow, but there's a ministry dedicated to bilingualism and trilingualism. And we have what we call content and language integrated learning. So this is a way of teaching the subjects in the what we call L2, or the second language. This poses, I mean, the concept is very noble, and it is a very good gesture. So really what happens is that we have children from grade 6, which is secondary children, are able to choose a subject of their choice and study it in this instance, English. We've been going for about 8 years, but we're seeing a very low take-up. So of all the children in between the grade 6 and 9, we only have 2.9% partaking in this model. So it poses a challenge. And you know why that is. It's because we don't have the teachers who are completely bilingual enough to be able to teach the subject in English, and then draw on deep learning, critical thinking. They just don't have the skill set. So that's the challenge we have. But I'll save much of the discussion for later. I'll wait for you to lead us into the next stage of the discussion.
No, it's extremely important and also relevant right at the start to just talk about the policy governing multilingualism and how is it taken to the classrooms and what's the relevance of that in the classroom. So if I may, actually, I'm going to repeat the similar question, and if you would like to add something, Professor Anjwin, in the context of Pakistan, is there an overarching policy? Is there an attempt to include multilingualism? So is it understood as an important sort of factor? And how do you see it translating into school classrooms? Over to you, Professor.
Thank you. What we see here is there are some declared policies and there are some undeclared policies. As a teacher, I would say, and all my fellow teachers in university and schools and colleges, they all believe that, yes, multilingualism should be there because it all started with code switching in the classroom. And then there is this thing, while I was studying ideologies, as my current research work, the ongoing is on multilingualism, I have studied two policies which are very much there, and it shows that how much teachers are interested in it, as you know, for the larger benefit of students. Number one is monoglossic language ideology. This is what is in practice, and this is what they say that government has equipped us, because it's in our constitution that the medium of instruction will be English, but then we till primary and elementary level, the medium of instruction is Urdu, and they can study in Urdu. Now what happens is the classroom reality says that it's a monoglossic language ideology should be there, but what is needed is heteroglossic, because again, the beauty of diversity, we have to celebrate the diversity, and this is what everybody believes. Out of all the aspects of multilingualism, I would like to talk about translanguaging. Translanguaging is, this happens when a student reads the content in English or in any language it is written, but now when it comes to interpretation, when it comes to speaking about it in the classroom, or when it comes to writing something about it or summarizing it, they can summarize it in any language, because translanguaging just frees them. It frees them from all the confinements that government or the policy has already put them into. This is what happens in a classroom where heteroglossic ideologies are practiced. As you said, that is it realized that this has been realized, but because of the ethnic and what they say class conflicts, they are not practicing it. They say that if somebody is speaking, we have 50 other languages, then 5 are main languages, 50 other languages. What how is it seen? It's a marker of low status. It's a marker of shame if a student is speaking in any other language, or they just want to express themselves in any other language. They become the source of laughter, of jokes, and then they're not they're not system of, they're not from elite school system, just because they're not speaking in English or they cannot write English. There are some challenges that I would like to talk on. Another is they think that it is a threat to our linguistic diversity if we are monoglossic. We think that our matrix language is English or Urdu, but policymakers are realizing it, but at the same time they think that we cannot come out of the colonial mindset. We cannot detach the power connotation with language. Now it's not in our hands. It's not in our hands. Even as a policy maker, no, there's this hegemony of language, that is English, or maybe now sometimes Urdu in Pakistan has also been it has been reached to that level where it is now at the expense of language loss, at the expense of language extinction. Urdu and English are being used in the classroom. Another, as I said, that colonial language policy is a problem. Another challenge that I would like to talk on is WTC, that is willingness to communicate. As policymakers, as teachers, I would be bringing something to the class. I will be teaching them, going out of the class. What about the population that I have to face every day in my classroom? Are they willing to communicate? Are they willing to say things up? They are willing to communicate. They have got a lot to say. They have got a lot to share, but still they cannot do it in their own language, no matter what language do they have. So awareness for the teachers is as important. Another thing is the social structure and also the requirements. For in Pakistan, if you want to join military, you should have the advanced level English knowledge. If you want to join civil services, you should have, even the native speakers do not know that English, you should know that. Or you want to join any private corporation that is very well known, you must be having sound knowledge of English. Only then you are able to be a part of it. That is why right from the schools, I was reading one paper while I knew that I had to be part of this great discussion. I was reading a paper from Flores. He says that we need a full-fledged transformation of schools and society. And who will bring that transformation? Only when teachers or someone who is the major stakeholder, that students, listen from them what they want to say. Or as a teacher, if I am the one who is willing to bring about heteroglossic ideology in the classroom, or translanguaging, because translanguaging allows the students to say things in whatever language they want to say, no matter what they have studied. And since everybody is a resource person, the students that are in the classroom or the teacher, we all together make a good resource. And this resource should be definitely, we want to spread this resource, and we want to spread it in what language, in whatever I'm comfortable in. And monoglossic language identity is what I will I myself, I favor multilingualism. But if someone says that what is your ideology, I say that yes, I believe in heteroglossic, but still I have to stay with one language, that is monoglossic. But what about my willingness of communication? That is always in L1. So we have some declared policies, we have some undeclared policies. Declared policies say that English is the medium of instruction. Undeclared policy is till metric, we have Urdu as medium of instruction. Once they go to college, now English is something they are not acquainted with, they are not familiar with. But in order to compete, there is this imbalance between their potential and what they want to what they have to say. They are just put in a situation that you have to express these things in this language. And what about the other indigenous languages that are spoken in Pakistan? There are 50 other languages other than Sindhi, Punjabi, Urdu, Balochi, and Saraiki. 50 other languages. I have this is my 8th year of teaching at public university in Pakistan. My first 6 years were at Agriculture University of Pakistan. So they were studying agriculture subjects, but all the concepts they wanted to know in Urdu and Sindhi. They said that no, we have to communicate with farmers. Why are we studying these terminologies? They are so hard to even pronounce in English. Why not in Urdu or Sindhi? Because at the end of the day, we have to communicate with farmers and all the people who are involved in this field. And now I'm teaching at business school. Here too, business students want to learn the concepts in Urdu or Sindhi in their own language. They said that we are going to be the marketing persons or HR, and then we have to bound ourselves. Or why are we looked at with an eye of a shame, or we belong to low cultures? That is why we cannot excel in any in this field, the field that we are in.
Sure.
So these
Good.
are the
Right. Sorry, sir. Please go ahead. I think you were making a concluding statement.
These are the challenges. Once you ask all others, I will come to solutions. That's what I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. No, definitely. We will talk a little bit about the solutions in the subsequent later part of it. So we have about 20 minutes more, and I do want to touch upon a couple of other for the discussion part, and then we still have question answers from the audience, etc. So we have another 30 minutes after 6 o'clock for that. So in the remaining time, though, I do want to sort of bring in both Dr. Prasad and Mr. Thakur, since we are at the policy topic. And towards the end, Anshbin also touched upon the complexity of it and how, despite having a great policy, actual sort of one, of course, the English language sort of overpowering other languages. It's a common experience in South Asia. We hear it in different countries. It's not different in India either. But now that also reminds me that the schools that Dr. Prasad, you're associated with, you have been running, are quintessentially English medium schools. But you do believe in multilingualism. Who else but you would be a great person to talk a little bit about how does this translate into your institutions, and what is your institution level policy for multilingualism, and what are the benefits as well as the challenges that you see? If you could summarize in a 3-4 minutes time, please. Over to you. Unmute.
Are we audible now? Yeah, thank you. So thank you, Mr. Rohan and Professor Anjbin. After 75 years now, the country is clear that there should be multilingualism in schools. At least the country is very clear, the government is very clear, number one. Number two, at the ground level, I see there's a lot of difference between policy and practice. Policy is very clear, at least after 75 years. But when it comes to practice, though personally, I am completely in favor of multilingualism. You can't expect a child to communicate well or effectively if the child has really not exercised thinking. If the child has not exercised, when you don't exercise thinking, you don't exercise words. The lexicography, whatever you call that, you can't do that, you won't do that. So your mind needs to fathom different types of languages. For example, if the child is asked to proactively use the language that is being used in his ethnic group or locality, whatever you call that, if the child has exposure to that, and if he can bring that exposure to the classroom, and if he is allowed that kind of a freedom to use a language in learning mathematics or art or science or social, whatever, sports, whatever it is, If the child has been given that kind of a freedom and dynamism, that child will be able to use 1, 2, or more than 2 languages without anything. So in Telangana, South India, what we are trying to do right now is we are following now interdisciplinary form of learning. When you're able to integrate complex subjects like math, science, sports, art, and everything, languages, literature, and everything. So what's the big deal in making the child use 2 or 3 or 4 languages? We are not asking for expertise in literature or poetry. Just asking the child to think in a language, to understand what he thinks or what he speaks, what he expresses, and how he communicates to the world outside. That's most important. He gets connected to the world through his language. So if the child is not able to express within a classroom context or situation, I don't think the child will be able to connect to the world outside. If the world outside uses different language other than his mother tongue. So I think for a child, the safest place is the classroom for him to interpret, think, listen, use, apply languages in a free and fair manner. That's more important. And let the child be allowed to make errors. It doesn't matter. And we think that the child is translating from this language to that language. It is not translation, in fact. Actually, the child is able to get those. For example, if you say thank you, Hindi mein aap bolte dhanyawad bolte hain. If the child knows in Nepali, Mr. Podjal is there, Chimilai Chahincha, you call that, right? Thank you. We'll be calling that. And then again, in Zongza, in Bhutanese language, you say it is Kadrin Chela. Then again, when you go to Lanka, Madam Shalini will agree with me, Bohoma is Tauti. Again, if it is in Punjabi, you call it Dhanyavad. If you go to, Malayalam, you call it Nandi. So if these different names are taken by the child, used by the child, is actually what is happening is that his capacity of the brain is increasing and expanding. And that can be used in a complex subject study part. That's the most important thing. So my point is, in a classroom, we are trying to do that. In a classroom, the child can use any language. If you want to explain a concept in 2-3 languages, आप कर सकते हैं. आप अंग्रेजी भी बोल सकते हैं, हिंदी में भी बोल सकते हैं, और कुछ other language में बोल सकते हैं. So long as you are thinking, you are communicating what you have really understood. So the problem here is that the child is not able to understand because he is forced to study or undertake studies only in the foreign language. So the conceptual clarity is not happening the way it should really happen. And any child whose mother tongue is the medium of instruction, who is able to use other languages at will, able to use mixed languages, use them in whatever the context that he feels he is capable of. The child should be allowed to do that. When that happens in the primary classes, ECCE segment, the child will be transported to secondary classes. By that time, he definitely, his intellectual powers would have definitely gone up very, very high. So I feel is that I'm strongly in favor of lingual classrooms. The one big challenge is that teachers are not willing to change, because we have been so accustomed to teaching in a particular way. It is increasingly becoming a very, very difficult point for us to bring about that multilinguistic atmosphere in the Indian classroom. This is my experience.
No, fantastic. Thank you so much. I think a couple of points that, of course, stayed back was, of course, is allowing students to make mistake. It's a common experience in this part, whether it's Pakistan, India, that there is a lot of shame attached to English because there's also some unnecessary pride attached to English. So with that also comes the shame of not knowing the language or making mistakes in it. And just with any other subject, but particularly in case of languages, the apprenticeship training is so important that you make errors and get better at it. because language, unlike any other subject, is a skill. More you practice, more you get better at it, right? So very important point that. And also, of course, the complexity. So in one challenge that you see, of course, the resistance to change from the teachers. And I was just glancing through all the comments that have come, assuming some of them are from teachers. They are pointing towards how difficult it is to practically make it happen. We can, of course, debate over it till cows come back home. But I want to first invite Mr. Thakur, since you have been in a role where all these stakeholders need to be kept happy, each one having the right thing to say. But how do we bring it all in practice? So how has been your experience? And since you have been in that position of being able to make decisions for the entire country and have driven reforms, I think I welcome you to also make a comment about the broader sort of South Asia, what that policy could look like, and what challenges do you see in forming such a policy to include multilingualism. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Dr. Rohan. I think the tension is between the ideal situation and the real situation, which have been so beautifully highlighted by our esteemed previous speakers already. I think overall, we ought to celebrate the multiplicity. We ought to celebrate plurality and the variety. However, given the fact that life is only so long and no longer, there are practical considerations that governments have to make. And I know how challenging that can be, especially when looking at the whole country. And especially for some of the bigger countries in the region, I'm sure the challenge is going to be even greater. However, that does not and should not stop us from aiming for the ideal situation. Practical problems will always be there. And our economies or our economic situations being whatever they are, there will always be challenges. But within those challenges, how do we bring out the best? How do we achieve the best? I see that we have constrained education to be a means to an end. And the end is normally an employment, a job. If we can think of education beyond employment, as important as it is, beyond jobs, as important as they are, I think we are already able to liberate education to perform a bigger function, have a bigger purpose, have a bigger goal. I think the requirement on the part of our school graduates, college graduates, university graduates, to fulfill the call of the market, corporations, that puts a tremendous constraint, limitation on the possibilities of our schools, colleges, universities, to enable the flourishing of our young men and women. I feel this is so very unfortunate because our students, our children, our boys and girls, our young men and women have such tremendous potential to reach fulfillment, to flourish in their lives. But just because we have these established expectations of how they should behave, how they should talk, how they should operate in a given situation, all those possibilities of flourishing and becoming somebody that they actually can be get so deeply, deeply curtailed. And as an educator myself, I've been in schools, primary schools, colleges, universities, and finally, I had to look after the education ministry for a period of 5 years. But I've been in education all my life, and I know the challenges as a teacher. However, as a teacher, I have believed in one thing more than in any other thing. That is that my biggest challenge has been to preserve the integrity of the learner. And how do I preserve the integrity of the learner? I do that not only by acknowledging the performance of the learner in a given test or an examination, but I do that by acknowledging the uniqueness, the integral self, the integrity of the learner as a person. The learner is not only a pupil, but the learner is a human being. And I feel that it falls upon the educators, the teachers, to be more open-minded, to be more liberal, to be more accepting of the faults, of the mistakes, of the errors that young people make. But if we only insist upon correctness, rigidity, and formal structures, whether it is in speaking or in conducting ourselves in a given situation, we are going to be all the time very cautious, trying to see as to whether we're going to fit the bill, and to that extent, limiting ourselves and also the scope of our institutions. How do we expand the scope of our classrooms, the scope of our schools and colleges and universities? How do we broaden the range of possibility, not only by speaking correctly in a certain language, but manifesting our possibilities as human beings, as perennial learners? I think our societies are going to be that much more beautiful, that much more advanced, that much more progressive, if we allow the flowering, the blossoming of the many possibilities which are inherent in our young people. It is challenging, but it is not impossible. And I believe that education is based on two principles. One is the principle of hope, and the other is the principle of possibility. Things may not be perfect now, but with effort, they can be made better. It is possible. If we do not believe in these possibilities and in the principle of hope, there is no incentive to build our schools, to build our colleges, to build our universities, and bring in the most precious segment of the population, our children, boys and girls, young men and women, and keep them there for extended periods of time. Schools, colleges, and universities ought to be places where talents blossom, where life flourishes, and the society moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Many, how would I say, the pearls of wisdom in this. The one that stays, of course, is Let Thousand Flowers Bloom, that celebrate the diversity. And the one prior to that, what you said, and also stayed back with me, because in the context of multilingualism, the biggest contention, I think a lot of teachers, and I'm sorry I say this on behalf of a lot of our educators, teachers who are in the audience, that one of the biggest concerns is, yes, we agree, but how do we make it happen practically in the classroom? I think one small piece of, let's say, suggestion, advice that comes from some of our seniors who has been the Minister of Education is, let the practical challenges not stop us from pursuing what is ideal. And I think that can actually perhaps guide our day-to-day sort of troubles and dilemmas with making multilingualism happen, and which is what also we are going to discuss in the next segment. In this, I'll just ask a couple of questions to Professor Anjbin and Shalini, of course, whom I haven't heard from in a while. But subsequently, we also have some comments and some questions have started coming in. One is from Dr. Klein himself, who has written here in the chat box. Then we'll move a little bit to questions, and some of your thoughts then get covered in question answer format as well. So Shalini, may I invite you to please share a couple of very practical sort of suggestions in terms of, okay, I mean, now I want to take these 3 or 4 or 5 languages that exist in our region, our country. How do we make it happen in the classroom? What's perhaps 1 or 2 most important strategies in your view?
So I think starting early, I really believe, I mean, while we have discussed about identity and what the inability to practice your mother tongue in your class space, I think children really don't think like that, and I'm an example of that. I'm a Tamil. My parents put me to study in the Sinhala medium, and I didn't remember thinking, oh, there's someone stripping me of my identity. Someone's just depriving me. They thought that it was in my best interest. But as a result, I'm trilingual because we spoke Tamil at home. Obviously, my written anyway. I really think that we should start early because that enables the teachers in primary, in grade 1, to lay foundations and to think of schemes that are practical and applicable. So if it's phonics, simple phonics, our languages are phonic, are in Sri Lanka, and I'm sure they are, most languages are. 80% of the English language is phonic. We do have irregular words and irregular spellings and so on. But if you start early and immerse the child in hearing the language, even if the teacher is unable, you can have videos, you can have them watch short clips. I know Bangladesh had the Meena series sponsored by UNICEF. The child picks it up, and I personally have seen it again in action when we lived in Denmark, and my children were 4.5 and 2, and they went to school and they picked it up. They didn't think twice about it. They were immersed, but they were in a Danish speaking country, so it helps. But before, you've asked me about the practical suggestions, but I really want to emphasize that we have to think about the Sustainable Development Goals, which are about quality education, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure. And for us in Sri Lanka, we can't access those without a global language because medical students are struggling because they don't have Gray's Anatomy is not translated to Tamil or Sinhalese. The engineering textbooks are not translated, the accounting and finance, the IT. And there are incidents of suicide, dropouts amongst secondary school, amongst university undergraduates. And we owe it to them to give them this opportunity to work in a global language. For us, we're too small to think of working, giving them, fulfilling their potential. The quality education of our SDG is access and fulfilling their potential. And we have to give them that access. And the access is through language.
Fantastic.
We can't even access Khan Academy because we don't have it in the languages of our choice.
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah. No, it's, I think, extremely important point. And we are moving, see, the challenges, I think, are absolutely at a very fundamental level, right? And I think one of the solutions which you gave, and I think it resonates with what Dr. Prasad was saying earlier, is that research also says that at the earlier stage of your life, in early ages, you have the natural sort of flexibility, cognitive flexibility to acquire more languages with much more ease. As such, you can learn a language throughout your life span, but especially in the younger age, the cognitive benefit is with you to learn faster. So starting very early is one clear solution, of course. There are some related questions to that, which I'll take subsequently in our audience. One, of course, is that is there enough government investment made at early education level for promoting multilingualism with teachers? Shalini, I'll come to you. I see the nod, and I had also read the notes you had shared on email prior to this, so I'm going to come back to you about this. Professor Anjbin, could you also just quickly sort of share a little bit about two practices that as an educator, as a teacher, you have tried out? Very hands-on, this can be done today, for example.
Recently, I've become a part of the national curriculum of Pakistan. It's a sort of a training that we have to give to other teachers, but first we have to be equipped with whatever we have to deliver. So I think to me, the solution which I was talking about was the connection or a linkage between. There are so many movements going on for the linguistic justice. And there are some people who really belong to this field. They are working on it and they are trying to connect with the policymakers. They are doing it. But what about the connection of what is going on in the classroom with those movements? So the first is that, and this is very much practical because I, as a young teacher, I favor multilingualism, but where do I have to speak about it? What's the platform where my voice will be heard? So it's about, number one is connecting young teachers to the platforms where policies are being made. Consider young teachers as the as the stakeholders. Number one. Another is, as I already said in the beginning, is inclusivity. If we are including, I have to be very clear to the learners that if somebody is saying things or translating, because they're thinking in Sindhi or Urdu, they're thinking in their native language, but when it comes to English, if they are making, like one of my students made a comment that I am a liver of Pakistan. It's like he lives there, so he's a liver of Pakistan, and everybody just laughed it off. And then it's been 7 years, they still said, madam, do you remember that student who said this, I'm the liver of Pakistan? I said, so what? Again, I would like to appreciate about Dr. Saab. He said that making mistakes, accepting mistakes of students, because we all make mistakes. This is something very practical, and it's not about laughing at the learners or taking them as challenging, or taking them. We have one term in Pakistan, I don't know about India, because it's in movies, in so many Indian movies. They say that this student doesn't know English, he's duffer or dullard. Where has this term come from? I mean, who is duffer? There are some students who are quick at the uptake, there are some who are slow at the uptake. That's it. There are two sort of learners. We've become teachers, and I was never somebody who was very quick at the uptake. I really wanted to read and reread and reread. So my readership had so many errors in it. So accepting errors is also, and also we have to address, nobody's addressing this issue, the power connotation, the power that is related to it. And my fellow panelists are very experienced, mashallah, and very senior to me, and they are there in policy making, and they are doing this. So I would like to say that, what was the, when they discussed these things, what was the reaction of the teachers? Were they ready to accept this potential? Were they ready to realize and understand the potential of translanguaging? Like, are they letting their students be free or not?
Right. Yes, I think the important point around is the teachers and them having a role in policy making itself. If multilingualism is to be practiced in classrooms, we already heard about the resistance part, and I think one part of the resistance could be because their voices are not considered at the time of policy making, and the practical challenges primarily that the teachers face when multilingualism is to be practiced in the classroom. So definitely, yes. The second is connection, which also Dr. Prasad talked about, that allowing children to use one or two more languages to communicate at the, like, sort of mixed languages, the English, as we say in India, Hindi plus English mix, or in fact now Telugu, I don't know whether there is a word for it, but now many Indian languages are now have become like mixed Telugu plus English, and children will speak, especially those who switch to Hindi or any other word when they speak English, actually doesn't show their less command over English, but it shows their command over multiple languages. So I think it's important to sort of keep that in mind as well. I'm going to just quickly do a time check. It's 6:05 and we have a bunch of questions. So with permission, and as graceful and nice they have been, I'm assuming that permission from Dr. Prasad and Mr. Thakur, that can I actually now involve you more in answering the questions that we have received from people and some of the comments as well? So we'll have some more sort of points to be discussed about the one important issue which has also come as a comment. And I was reminded very quickly, whether it's Bhutan, whether it's India, Pakistan, the ethnic, when I say ethnic, the indigenous or other word for it in India is tribal, the scheduled tribes or the tribal population. Professor Anjmin mentioned about the other languages, which are languages, but they're sort of like not formally considered in the curriculum, etc. How do we bring in? There are actually research studies called other people's languages. How do we bring in those languages in the classroom? So there is one definite sort of like thought that should be given to this, and it's an important enough point around inclusivity, even within multilingualism. There was another comment about how do we replace English with Hindi to make one language as common for all. Let me clarify that, replacing one prominent language with another is not multilingualism. It's still hegemony of one language. If you pick one, so the panel actually is exactly opposite to the idea that you're talking about. How do we make multiple languages important at the same time rather than one language overpowering? So it was a comment, and I'm just responding on behalf, going by the tone of the panel, on behalf of all panelists. I hope they agree. And somebody has kindly pointed out sign languages also. Yes, for those who cannot express themselves verbally, but express through other sort of like through sign languages or any other inclusivity of those languages, extremely important. So thank you for those who pointed this out in the comments. Now coming to the questions. So, okay, so one question is about this one particular language. So just like China uses Chinese, France uses French, why cannot we use official language, as majority people will speak one official language? Dr. Prasad, do you have something to say about this?
Yeah, it's a very, of course, controversial question. There's no doubt about it. Now, in this present world of plurality, where a lot of ethnic groups are there, different language speaking people are there, I think it's difficult to answer. But what I feel is, even if you take English, you need not replace any language with any other language. Let languages come together for a play, for a harmonious play, harmonious blend. We are thinking of new, if the child has to really have a new world view, including diversity, then the child will have to go through these languages. Not as a literator, but at least the basics of the language, not as a proficient. Please mark the difference. Not as the level of proficiency we're talking about. You should be able to understand the basic tenets of that language, which you should be able to use it. So I think we in our South Asian countries, Bhutan, Nepal, India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, in these countries, what I feel is, as it is said, the GDP that's even in India also is allocated for education is very, very less. The other day I was in a conference in Bangalore. One of the small South African nations, the education minister was there as a panel member. He said his country is earmarking 22% of GDP for education. 22% of this one. A small nation in South Africa, close to some, an ocean. And so I'm just telling. But this is one side of it. The other side of it is, you please tell me, you want creativity in the children. You want critical thinking in the children. You want problem solving in the children. So if the child has to be creative, how can a child be creative if he is not able to use 2-3 languages itself? What will happen to the creativity? It will take a downturn actually. So in the classroom, when people say it's very ideal to think of multi-language classrooms. When you are against risk taking, it becomes ideal. If you are a risk taker, if a teacher opens her window to the world of languages, then languages go into the classroom. People start using it, and you will find within 6 months' time, entire classroom will be buzzing with activity with different languages. So we are scared of doing, because we are so conditioned to work in a particular way, to use a language in a particular way, that we are afraid of using multiple languages in a conceptual context. That's more important thing. I think teachers need to come out of this limited thinking possibilities, and once the children start doing it, it will really surprise the teacher that his children are able to use multi-languages within no time, effortlessly.
Wonderful. Completely agree. Very nicely put. Thank you so much. And Shalini, you had briefly raised your hand. Would you like to say something here? Would you like to step in?
Yes, we are seeing a remarkable phenomenon through necessity. because we're going through an economic crisis, we have jobs, decent jobs, and we're seeing a cohort of young people who are taking the Korean language course, and it's quite hard. The pass rate is a challenge. In 6 to 8 months, and there's a written exam as well as an oral test, and we've just sent the second batch of 5,000. So about 11,000 young people have gone to Korea, having learned Korean in 6 to 8 months. We don't teach Korean in schools because through necessity, they need to pass this written and oral exam, and it's online, and they're going. So there must, I think if there's a will, there's a way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yes, definitely. We cannot emphasize more about just embracing this and deciding that this needs to be done. And now let's figure how this should be done. There is one question. I think I'll address it to Dr. Prasad, and then I'll come once again to Mr. Thakur and Anjbin, is because something he said in the initial remarks. So there's a question that there is a general understanding that English is the language which allows you to get better financial opportunities. Would insisting on multilingualism reduce opportunities in the job market? Anybody, but since Dr. Prasad had made a reference to it initially, starting with you and anybody.
Yeah. So it has been the thinking of the people in the industry, in schools and universities, that English language, which is a foreign language, I think is the most important language that is sought by industries for placement. There's no doubt about that. But when you are learning cognitive subjects, when you're learning math, science, engineering, etc., if you are not good at conceptual clarity, conceptual understanding, applications, expressing your understanding in detail, then I don't think you will be able to get into any job, even if you are good at English. So my point is, you are good at English, but your depth of the subject you're talking about is not so good as your English, then I don't think any industry will consider you for a job. All the people who believe that knowledge of English will enable him to get into the job, I am not in favor of. If you have the associative the property of the subject or the knowledge of the subject that you have got, then both these things go together. But in the initial stages of schooling, if you are able to express in any language dynamically, I tell you, sir, that the child will be able to pick up English with the same fluency, even when he does it only with English. I don't think it will reduce the fluency of English in any way if the child is able to use 2 to 3 languages at the school level. So he will be ready by the time he goes to graduation or post-graduation, that his language, whether it is English or any other thing, will be as good as otherwise.
I agree to that point. And this is what is one of the aspects of translanguaging is there. Because once you've understood the concepts, and I would say, as Madam said, that we have to start early. So if it has started early and you have just given them a chance, a freedom, and you give autonomy to students to express their ideas in any language, then they will be so curious to learn it in any language, and they will adopt it naturally. Yes, you're right, sir. Right. I agree to it.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for highlighting these points. I think the question is adequately answered. There are a couple of long questions which I'm just reading out, acknowledging because they asked these questions, and those are partially answered already, or in fact fully. One was, of course, that, while communication in regional language helps in understanding the concepts better, should the medium of education in terms of language in textbook change from English to regional language? Or is there any other way? So essentially, do we need to change the language medium of instruction, the language of instruction from, let's say, English to the regional language to make classrooms more multilingual? And wouldn't English terminologies help better in understanding the subject when it comes to higher studies where translations are not easily available? If that is so, our policy is actively stopping the teachers from explaining the concept in regional language while continuing the use of English for reading and writing. I mean, with our experience of thousands of schools, at least in India, we know that the school operates as an English medium, but teachers, of course, do switch between regional language and English when they instruct and talk to the students. Adopting formal curriculum, I know in case of India, we already have, each state has its own textbooks in state level languages, but let's hear about how is it in Bhutan and how is it in Sri Lanka and Pakistan, for example. Mr. Thakur, would you like to add something? Do you think that the language needs to change from English to the regional language when you teach in the classroom? Does the syllabus need to change from English into the regional language?
Thank you. I was going to respond to one question I saw on the screen, but I
Please
think I
go
moved
ahead.
on.
Please.
That's
Please.
all right. I think, of course, language is a very powerful tool whereby identities are manifested. And I feel it's about time that education systems, educators went beyond some of these highly utilitarian and reductionistic perspectives through which we look at education. Of course, because of economic constraints, budgetary issues, we have to see how the rubber meets the road. But I feel that education ought to be seen in a brighter light, in a more sublime light. I see education as the noble sector. Perhaps I'm the only person in the world today who believes that education ought to be the noble sector. Some wise people in the past called education the noble sector. No other sector, not even health, has ever been described as the noble sector. Education is meant to help young men and women cultivate the nobility of mind, help young men and women cultivate the nobility of their heart, thereby leading to the cultivation of the nobility of hands. So when the head and the heart and the hands are engaged on the principle of nobility, you can imagine the power in the hands of these young men and women. And when these young men and women leave their centers of learning, schools, colleges, and universities, and join the larger society, they will definitely make our societies better, our nations better. But if education is seen only as a mere tool to find a job, to cater to the needs, to pander to the needs, and the commercial, highly reductionistic, often soulless needs of the job market, they will reduce the possibility of life. So I feel that we should also empower our teachers. Technology can go so far, but no further. We may have state-of-the-art technology, the finest, fabulous resources in our schools, colleges, and universities. But at the end of the day, it is the human teacher who will make these technologies speak, who will give life to these technologies and resources. So if we empower our teachers, if we build capacity in our teachers, not only through greater remuneration or proper acknowledgement of their services, teaching is an extremely difficult job. I'm a teacher myself. I've been a teacher myself. So I know that teaching, it takes everything out of you. It drains you out physically, emotionally, mentally, and often spiritually. See, it takes everything out of you. And not everybody understands what it takes to be a teacher. See, so acknowledging the integrity of the teaching profession, empowering the teachers who are supposed to make our societies better in the way they ought to be acknowledged, I feel will be the way forward. And all the nitty-gritties, the details will fall into place. We have to change the language of discourse. I think today even the language of discourse in education has become very pedestrian. We do not use terms like the noble sector, respect for education, honor in education, integrity in education. I feel it's about time that we looked at education from a broader, sublimer, and a much more purposeful perspective. Then I think a lot of things will fall into place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think the topic itself and all the experience and wealth of perspective that you bring, we can go much longer on this. Unfortunately, there is a constraint of time. There are 2-3 questions that are there, and one of them is from Dr. Klein, who's of course the regional director of the Frederick Naumann Foundation, who coincidentally is also going to deliver the closing remarks for this panel discussion. So his main question, of course, one of the questions is that, is there sufficient backing support from the political side for multilingualism? What I would do rather than that opening right now for the panel, may I please invite Dr. Klein, as he is going to give the closing remarks, and we're also coming to the closure of the panel discussion, not the topic, because it's something that will go on and on. Let me just quickly thank all the participants who have shared all your questions and comments. I've been able to read, and so have been the panelists. So your thoughts have reached us. Due to the constraints of time, I have not been able to read out all the longer comments. They are very really nuanced and important comments nonetheless. I had a chance to glance through, read through some of them. So thank you for sharing those. You have been great in sharing all these questions. Similarly, thank you so much to the panelists. Professor Anjbin, I think, has got dropped out just now, but individually to Dr. Prasad, Chalini, to Mr. Thakur, thank you so much for all the amazing work that you do, first of all, and that translates into all your insights and perspective that you have shared right now here in this panel discussion. That given the topic and all that we aspired to achieve, maybe we have done some justice. Obviously, it's not possible to do full justice, but I hope that this conversation continues. To the audience, I welcome you also to continue this conversation. Of course, you must be having it within your communities, colleagues, and but also with the experts who are there. You can find a way to reach out and share your questions directly with the experts as well. With this, let me once again thanks all the organizers, Center for Civil Society, Frederick Naumann Foundation for hosting this, and on behalf of all the panelists. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing Dr. Klein. So welcome, Dr. Klein, and over to you for your remarks, please.
Thank you very much. So sorry for this time constraint. It was really an excellent discussion, and I think the audience shows how important this issue is. So again, my thanks to Professor Samro, to Dr. Vikram Surija, to Dr. Rao, and of course to Professor Powder. Not to forget Rohan Joshi, our excellent moderator. With that, I would like to hand over the thank you certificates, quite unique ones, to you, and you will also see a QR code. So please, all dear panelists and especially audience, always feel inspired to give us some comments. That will be really wonderful. We will, as Friedrich Naumann Foundation here in South Asia, together with our dear partner CCS, definitely continue this series. So thanks again for this excellent opportunity to talk about opportunities, but also challenges of multilingualism. I myself have to say I'm a big advocate for the possibility of learning many languages from a very early age. I myself hadn't had this opportunity, so I really bow for all the South Asian students who have the chance to, in their very early age, also learn some other languages, amongst them, of course, English. I would say that we also in Europe have some neighboring countries of Germany, which are in a much better position, like Switzerland, Luxembourg, Belgium, where also school children already learn from the very scratch foreign languages. And that gives them a lot better understanding of the different and immediate neighbors, cultures, identities, and it gives them also better job opportunities. Of course, I completely second our Bhutanese friend. It's not everything about job opportunities, but I think they, at least in our situation, play a certain role. Identity, however, is much more important. And so I might also hint at the language minorities in Germany. Yes, we have them in the at the geographic edges of our countries. We have the Danes. Professor Vikram Suya, you have also made your experiences with Denmark and the Danish neighbors. We have the Frisians as a minor group of language speakers, and we have Sorbs. And it is very good that especially in the local regional parliaments in Germany and in other regions, and that might be another aspect of our next discussion on this very important topic. Yes, there is a lot of political backing up these teachers, but also the parents and of course the students to really dive a little bit deeper into the culture, into the identity of the neighbors. And that is, especially from a European historic lens, a very, very important issue, because only with this you could overcome borders, frontiers, cultural frontiers, and even, as we know about the tragedy of our own history, to also overcome historical boundaries and make friendship amongst former enemies. One other thing I would like to stress here, and that is something what we should discuss in our next round as well, if I may suggest from my very humble perspective, is school partnerships. I really believe that partnerships beyond borders from schools with multitude of different languages, of cultures, is giving a student from the very, very beginning of their career a possibility to understand the neighborhoods, and therefore, and that is also a very important hint here, the integrity of South Asia and of course also of Europe. So thank you very much to all of you again. It was a very, very extremely intensive and fruitful discussion. Thanks especially to Amrit Chandra, CEO of CCS, and Mrs. Shoria from CCS team. Thanks for the excellent cooperation we always have with you, not only in the field of this educational series. Thanks, and please also allow me about that, to our Friedrich Naumann Foundation South Asia team, especially our program managers, Mrs. Hasija, Mr. Paljor, dear Mrs. Mishra, Mrs. Saxena, and others, Tashi. Thanks for all your personal efforts for organizing such a webinar. And again, thanks, dear panelists and moderator, and thanks, dear audience, for giving us this chance to interact with you very closely. Do not hesitate to visit our homepage. There you will also see about other activities of Friedrich Naumann Foundation in our area. And do please also follow us on social media. Again, thank you very much for this great interaction. And I'm pretty much sure that we see each other again or anew in person very soon. Thanks again to the audience for this very relevant comments. And I wish you a very, very good evening and a very good and healthy time ahead. Thanks and a good evening from New Delhi.
Thank you
very
so
much.
much indeed. It's been wonderful. Sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.